We will continue to study the part 2 of the book 6, which is concerned with what is called the enemies of the Buddha, his enemies. And so far we have covered subparts 1 and subpart 2, the charge of conversion by glamour and charge of being a parasite. So we have seen at length how the Buddha dealt with these two charges of converting by means of the glamour or being called a parasite. So today we are going to look at or study the charge of breaking happy household, because Buddha was charged that he is breaking the happy households. And then there was a charge by the Jains and a false charge of murder, Jains and a false charge of immorality, Devdatta, a cousin and an enemy, 7 Brahmins and the Buddha. So we are going to look at the subpart 3 to begin with. And subpart 3 is about charge of breaking happy household. So as we know that the Buddha taught that, a lot of people at the time of the Buddha renunciated their houses and they become homeless. And as the verse number 1 goes, that many distinguished young Magadha noblemen had become the disciples of the Blessed One. So we have seen that not only the noble people or rich people like Yasha and his friends, also the Jatilas, they became the followers of the Buddha. And because the people were becoming the followers of the Buddha, some of the people got annoyed and angry, saying the Samana Gautama causes parents to be childless. So that was one of the charges on the Buddha. What was it? The Samana Gautama causes parents to be childless. The Samana Gautama causes wives to become widows. The Samana Gautama causes the uprooting of families. So those were the charges against the Buddha. And as we have seen in the past classes, previous classes, that he has ordained 1,000 Jatilas. And we have seen the story of Jatilas as to how the 3 Jatila brothers became the followers of the Buddha. And then he has ordained these 250 wandering ascetics who were followers of Sanjaya. So there was a philosopher Sanjaya Belatiputta and Mahamoggalayan and Sariputra were his disciples. And we have seen that 250 were also became the followers of the Buddha, who were initially the followers of Sanjaya Belatiputta. And these many distinguished young Magadha clansmen are now leading a holy life under the Samana Gautama. What will happen next? No one can say. And moreover, whenever they saw the monks, they chid them in the following terms. The great Samana has come to Giribhaja. Giribhaja was the name of the Rajagraha of the Magadha people, leading with him all the followers of Sanjaya, who will be the next to be led by him. Okay. The Blessed Lord, the monks heard this accusation and they reported it to the Blessed One. Now you see, those who were the enemies of the Buddha, they used to call Buddha the Samana Gautama. They didn't used to call him Bhagwan or Bhagavad, whatever. They used to call the Buddha Samana Gautama, addressing him with his name, family name, Gautama. And Samana is, of course, because he was coming from the shamanic tradition. Now the Blessed One replied to this accusation thus: this noise, monks, will not last long. So whatever noise there is around, the charges on the Buddha, the Blessed Lord said that, it will not last long. It will last only 7 days. After 7 days, it will be over. You see, this is very important that, there will be accusations, there will be charges, counter charges, false charges, and so on and so forth. What the Buddha is saying that even this charges doesn't last long, isn't it? So we should not be worried about this accusation or whatever, bad words which are heaped upon the Buddha. So that's what the Buddha says. This noise, monks, will not last long. It will last only 7 days. After 7 days, it will be over. So Buddha says that after 7 days, this will be over. And if they chide you, monks, you should reply that it is truly by a good Dhamma that the great heroes, the Tathagata, lead. So you see, the Buddha is not leading the people out to the life of homelessness. What the Buddha is saying that it is the good Dhamma which is leading those great heroes. So most of the times, the people who renunciate the house, they are considered to be, lazy, or, having no energy. They just want to idle away their time. They want to live the life of idleness. But such is not the case. The case is this, that those who are led by the Dhamma are actually the heroes, the great heroes, Mahavira. So you see, and if they chide you, monks, you should reply that it is truly by a good Dhamma that the great heroes, the Tathagatas, lead. So the Tathagata leads not by his person. Of course, there is a human personality to the Buddha, but the Buddha leads by through the good Dhamma. Who will murmur at the wise? Why grudge the wise leading men righteously? So, why should we murmur or gossip about somebody who is wise and he is leading the people righteously? There is no compulsion in my Dhamma. The Buddha said, I don't make it compulsory for the people to follow my Dhamma. One is free to leave home, one is free to remain attached to his home. And we have seen that the Dhamma is same for both homeless and homebound. Isn't it? It doesn't diametrically differ for the people who are staying in home and people who are not staying in home. So when the bhikkhus replied to the revivals as the Blessed One has directed, then the people understood. It is by Dhamma and not unrighteously that the Sakya Puttiya, Samana, leads men and cease to accuse the Blessed One. Isn't it? So people are led to the life of homelessness, not because of the, of course, the Buddha was a very charismatic teacher, and of course, he was a very learned man. But the Buddha didn't lead the people, by any other means than the Dhamma. He explained the Dhamma to the people. He taught the Dhamma to the people. He discoursed. He answered the questions of the people. The Buddha's, if you look at the Buddhist sutras, they are not one-way discussions. The Buddha is arguing back and forth, and the person who is trying to clarify points for himself or herself, they are agreeing back and forth. So that there is a false charge that the Buddhism or the Buddha is breaking the happy households. And this is how the Buddha said that, don't pay attention to that, because anyway, a lot of gossiping and accusations are bound to happen. And they are going to die away, of course, after a certain period of time. It's the nature of the world. Nothing remains. So that's number one. Number two is this, that the Buddha, is truly by a good Dhamma that the great heroes, the Tathagatas, lead. Now, this is what the Buddha has, how the Buddha has answered the charge of breaking happy households. Now, coming down to the subpart 4, Jains and the false accusation of murder. This is a very famous story in the Buddhist scriptures. There was, the Tirthikas, where the religious group, and sometimes considered to be the Jainas, Tirthankars. And, they were also coming from the Shramnik tradition. But because of the prestige that the Buddha had received, they were somehow not comfortable with it. So they were trying to find out, how to lower the prestige of the Buddha. That's what the Jainas or the Tirthikas thought. So they thought that let's take the help of a woman named Sundari. And they approached Sundari and said to her, sister, you are extremely beautiful and charming. If you spread a scandal about Samana Gautama, you note the use of the word Samana Gautama. That's how the enemies of the Buddha used to address him, Samana Gautama, not as the Tathagata or Bhagwan or Blessed Lord. So, the Buddha received his own, share of the worldly winds, but Buddha was never shaken. His mind was firm. His mind was unshakable. So in this story, we can see that the Jainas or the Tirthikas approached Sundari and said to her, sister, you are extremely beautiful and charming. If you spread a scandal about Samana Gautama, the people might believe it and it would lower his influence. So what Sundari used to do, Sundari used to go every evening towards the Jetavana with garlands. Now it's in Shravasti. The location of this event is Shravasti. That is the beauty of the Buddhist scriptures. The place, the timing, the people, everybody is, clearly stated. So, the place is Jetavana, where she used to go. She used to garland herself and, have camphor, sweet scents when the people used to return to the city. And if anybody asked her, Sundari, where are you going? So people used to ask her, Sundari, where are you going? She used to answer, I am going to Samana Gautama to stay in the garden house, Gandhakuti. So Buddha's dwelling place was called the Gandhakuti. And the one which is in Sarnath now is called the Mula Gandhakuti. I think that might be the first Gandhakuti. And where the Buddha used to, he used to live in a small kuti. So I'm going to Samana Gautama to stay in the garden house, Gandha Kuti. And staying the night in some gardens of the Tirthikas, she used to return in the morning. So in the night, she used to go towards the Jetavana. If people asked her, "Where are you going, sister?" She used to answer that I am going to go to Samana Gautama and I am going to spend a night there in the garden Kuti or Gandha Kuti. So she used to return in the morning, and if anybody asked her where she had spent the night, she would say that she had spent the night with Gautama. So that was a reply, that she was spending night with the Gautama. After a few days, the Tirthikas hired a few assassins and told them, "Kill Sundari and throw her body on the rubbish heap near Gautama's Gandhakuti." This the assassins did. So after a few days, when the gossip was there that Sundari, the beautiful woman, is going to the Gandhakuti in the night, returning back in the morning, the gossip spread all over the places like it does all the time. And the Tirthikas got the assassins to kill her, and her body was thrown near the Jetavana in the rubbish heap near Gautama's Gandhakuti. Then the Tirthikas brought it to the notice of the officers of peace and justice that Sundari used to frequent Jetavana and now she was missing. So with the assistance of the officers, they found Sundari's body on the rubbish heap, and the Tirthikas accused the disciples of Gautama to have killed Sundari in order to hide the shame of their leader. You see, this is a bigger conspiracy, and to malign the name of the Buddha, to malign the name of Shakyamuni. And because he rose to such a popularity in a very short period of time, because he was a teacher par excellence, and his Dhamma really spoke for the needs of the people. And we can see that, the people are jealous. But the assassins began to quarrel amongst themselves in the liquor shop about the distribution of the prize money for having killed Sundari. The officers at once arrested them, and they admitted their guilt and implicated the Tirthikas, at whose instigation they had committed the crime. Thus, the Tirthikas lost whatever influence was left for them. So you see, it's not that the Buddha was not, attacked, or Buddha was not maligned, or the Buddha was not gossiped about, or Buddha was not accused of any false charges. The Buddha had indeed gone through all these worldly events. There is praise, there is, people try to sometimes give it as a bad name, and sometimes some people praise us. Sometimes we lose, sometimes we gain, sometimes we have profit, sometimes we have loss, sometimes we have success, sometimes we have failure. These are all worldly events. And the Buddha is, of course, not, influenced by the worldly events. And, because we live in the world, we are bound to encounter them. And in this incident, we can find out that, how the Buddha remained unshaken. Now, the fifth subpart is also a very beautiful story of the Jains and the false charge of immorality. So they said that the Buddha is immoral. And, they also planned a certain conspiracy. So what was this conspiracy like? So as with the sunrise, the glowworms vanishes. So miserable became the situation of the Tirthikas. The people ceased to pay them respects and present. Standing on the public street, they used to harangue. If Samana Gautama is enlightened Buddha, we are also. If you acquire virtue by showering presents on the Buddha, you will get the same by giving us presents. Therefore, make gifts to us. You see, all the gifts, all the dana is going to the Buddhist Sangha. So, of course, the Tirthikas were not happy with it. And they used to go in the public streets, and they used to say like this, that if Samana Gautama is enlightened Buddha, we are also enlightened. If you acquire virtue by showering presents on the Buddha, you will get the same by giving us presents. Therefore, make gifts to us. But the public did not pay attention, so they conspired in secret how by spreading scandal on the character of Samana Gautama, they could discredit the Sangha. So what was the scandal like? There was another woman who was a Brahmani Parivrajaka. She was a Brahmani Parivrajaka. Her name was Chincha. And in bodily formation and physical shape, she was a seductive beauty. She used to radiate voluptuous grace with her bodily movements. So one of the crafty schemers among the Tirthikas said that with the help of Chincha, it would be easy to spread a scandal about Gautama and thereby discredit him, to which other Tirthikas gave their consent. So they went to Chincha, told their problem, and they asked, how have I offended you? You tell us, what am I supposed to do? And the Tirthikas told her sister, don't you know that Samana Gautama is causing us harm and loss by his popularity? I do not know that, she said, and have I got any duty to perform towards his solution? So they said, sister, if you mean to do us good, then by your own efforts, spread scandals about Gautama and thus make him unpopular. All right, be content and depend that on me. Saying thus, she left the place. Now, Chincha was an expert feminine charms and coquetry. When the citizens of Savastri used to return from the religious discussions in Jetavana, Chincha, wearing a red garment and with perfumes and garlands in the hands, used to go towards it. So people are coming out from the religious discourse, and she used to go to Jetavana in the night. So if same like Sundari, if somebody asks her, where are you going now? That's none of your business. She used to answer, spending the night at rest house of the itinerant Tirthikaram near Jetavana. She used to return to the city in the morning when the citizens used to go to Jetavana to pay respect to the Buddha. If anybody asked her, where did you spend the night? She used to say, that's none of your business. I spent the night with Samana Gautama in his garden house, Kandakutir at Jetavana. The remarks used to create doubts in the minds of some. After 4 months, she used to increase the size of her belly by wrapping around it some old rags and say that she became pregnant through Samana Gautama. Some began to believe it. So after a few months of her going back and forth between Jetavana, she pretended as if she is pregnant and she used to wrap cloths around her body. In the 9th month, she suspending a wooden protuberance round her belly and having arms swollen through insect bites, appeared before the Buddha when he was making a religious discourse before monks and laymen, and said, Chincha said this to the Buddha, great teacher, you give many people religious lessons, your voice is sweet and your lips are very tender. Through cohabitation with you, I have been pregnant and my delivery time is near. Then 15, you have not fixed any delivery place for me, nor I do see any medicine for that emergency. If you cannot do that yourself, why don't you appoint one of your disciples, the king of Kosala, Anathapindaka, or Vishaka for that purpose? This is how she said. And she further said, it seems you know well how to seduce a girl, but you do not know how to take care of the newborn baby that is born out of the seduction. The assembly remained silent. Now imagine a scene where the Buddha is being accused of this scandal of seducing a lady. And the Buddha is of course in the assembly. He was about to give a discourse. So the Buddha, this verse number 70 is very, very important. The Buddha, breaking the continuity of his lecture, answered her with reserved dignity. Buddha never compromised with his dignity. Buddha was, if anything, was very dignified human being. He never compromised with his dignity ever. So with his reserved dignity, he said, sister, whatever you have said, whether true or false, is only known to us both. Isn't it? See, sometimes in the interpersonal relationship, when people accuse each other, only they two know what has happened between the two of them or had not happened between the two of them. And here the Buddha is very, wise in articulating this. He did not accuse her of telling a lie. He did not become angry. He was dignified. And with his dignity, he said, sister, whatever you have said, whether true or false, is only known to us both. So Chincha coughing loudly because she was taken aback because she thought that the Buddha would be angry, Buddha would refute her charge, Buddha would do something else. But what the Buddha did is very brilliantly he made this statement, sister, whatever you have said, whether true or false, is only known to us both. And other people just can't speculate about it. So only you and me know what has happened between you and me. So, Chincha coughing loudly said, yes, O teacher, such a thing can be known to us only. So she is taking in other way. With her coughing, the knot with which the wooden protuberance was tied round her belly, slackened, and it fell on her feet to her discomfiture. And she was turned away with stones and sticks. So this is what happened with Chincha. This is a very famous story in the Buddhist scriptures. We can it's told in many contexts. Now, when we move on to the subpart 6, Devadatta, a cousin and an enemy. So Devadatta, of course, was a cousin of the Buddha, and we know that he was competing with Buddha throughout his life. We know of the stories of his childhood. We know of how Devadatta was trying to cause harm to the Buddha. So he was so jealous of the Buddha, and he disliked him so intensely that he even tried to kill the Buddha. So one of the things that is mentioned here is a story of how Devadatta wanted to try to make love to Yashodhara. So this is a story that I'm going to read a bit, and we will then think about it. So once when Yashodhara was about to retire, he, without being intercepted by anybody, entered into a chamber in the guise of a monk. She asked him, Bhikkhu, what do you want? Have you got any message for me from my husband? So this is maybe at the time of when the Buddha was already a monk, and I think maybe the context maybe that maybe Yashodhara was also a nun. Your husband, he cares a damn for you. In your house of happiness, he cruelly and wickedly abandoned you, said Devdatta. But he did it for the good of many, replied Yashodhara. Just said, my happiness is not matter. He did it for many, replied Yashodhara. Whatever that be, now take revenge on his disdainful cruelty to you. Stop it, O monk, your words and thoughts are impure, countered Yashodhara. Don't you recognize me, Yashodhara? I am Devadatta who loves you. Devadatta, I knew you to be false and vile. I thought you would make a bad monk, but did not suspect you to be so mean-minded. So already, Devadatta was notorious, but the Buddha, out of his compassion, even opened the the doors of deathlessness for Devadatta, knowing his nature. Yashodhara, Yashodhara, I love you, pleaded Devadatta, and your husband shows you nothing but contempt. He had been cruel to you. Love me and revenge his cruelty. You see how mean-minded is Devadatta. Now I think this is a scene that has taken place after when Yashodhara was fairly old, and she may be a nun herself. Yashodhara's pale and emaciated face became tinged with a purple hue. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Devadatta, it is you who are cruel to me. Even if your love were sincere, it would have been an insult to me. You are simply lying when you say you love me. Now verse number 13 goes like this. When I was young and pretty, you hardly looked at me. Now I am old, broken down by sorrow and anguish. You have come at night to declare your treacherous and guilty love. You are a base coward. And she shouted, Devadatta, get out from the place. And Devadatta left the place. You see how determined Devadatta was to malign the Buddha, So also Devadatta was trying to seek the chieftainship of the Sangha, and he went to Buddha and asked a few times to the Buddha to make him the chief of the Sangha, and Buddha of course declined to make him the chief of the Sangha because the Dhamma was the leader of the Sangha. But instead he also made Sariputra and Moggallon the chief men of the Sangha. They were called the Dhamma Senapati. Dhamma Raja and Dhamma Senapati. The Buddha was of course called the Dhamma Raja. He was the Dhamma Raja, the first Dhamma Raja in the history of the world, to the king of the Dhamma. And he had these two Senapatis who were called Sariputra and Moggallon. So the Devadatta was very angry with the Buddha, and he wanted to take a revenge on the Buddha. He wanted to kill him. And this incident took place in Girdakut, Vulture Peak. A very beautiful spot. Even we can witness it today in Rajagraha. So this incident took place like this. The Buddha was going down on from the Gridakut, and Devadatta climbed it up and hurled down a large stone with the intention of depriving the Blessed One of his life. But it fell upon another rock, and there it was entombed. It was blocked. Only a splinter falling from it made the foot of the Buddha, Blessed One, to bleed. So this was the first attempt of the Devadatta to kill the Buddha. He hurled down a large stone from the mountain, and the Buddha was walking on the foothills of Gridakut, and that rock was blocked by another rock. Only splinter came and it hurt the feet of the Buddha. A second time, he made an attempt to take the life of the Buddha. This time, Devadatta went to Prince Ajashatru and said, "Give me some men." That time, Ajashatru and Devadatta were on the good terms. Later on, Ajashatru became the very ardent follower of the Buddha, as we have seen in the history. And Ajashatru, the prince, gave order to his men, "Whatsoever the worthy Devadatta tells you, do that." So then to one man, Devadatta gave command, "Go, my friend, the Samana Gautama is staying at such a place, kill him." And the man returned and said to him, "I cannot deprive the Blessed One of his life." See, this is, coming in contact with the Buddha, or, such a profoundly compassionate human being. You cannot. You don't want to hurt him. You don't want to hurt the Buddha. He made a third attempt on the life of the Buddha. This time there was at Rajagraha an elephant named Nalagiri. And we all know the story of a Nalagiri, the elephant, who attacked the Buddha. And it's depicted in all the Buddhist art, that this mad, fierce, and manslayer. The elephant was known as a manslayer. And Devadatta went into Rajagraha and to the elephant stables and said to the elephant keepers, "I, my friends, am a relative of the Raja and am able to advance a man occupying a low position to a high position and to order an increase of his rations or of his pay. Therefore, my friends, when Samana Gautama shall have arrived at this carriage road, then loose the elephant Nalagiri and let him go down the road." Devadatta also engaged the archers to kill the Buddha. And we know the story that the mad elephant darted towards the Buddha. And the Buddha was firm. And, he was looking at the Naga. The elephant is also called Naga. And looking at the composer of the Buddha, the Nalagiri could not attack the Buddha, and he knelt down before the Buddha and he saluted the Buddha, and he did not hurt the Buddha. And the Buddha uttered a very famous sentence there. It is not good for a Naga to kill the Naga. It's very beautiful. And this episode of Nalagiri and the Buddha is not only found in the Buddhist sculptures, in the arts, but there are, it's also in the verses. When we chant the Jai Mangala Tagata as to, how the Buddha was victorious. Even he tamed the untamable, fierce, and manslayer elephant, the Naga, Nalagiri Naga. And, the Buddha says that it's not good, it's not wise for a Naga to hurt another Naga. So this is very beautifully explained here. Devadatta was trying to hurt the Buddha. He didn't succeed. He lost his all public endowments. But it is said that even when Xuanzang came to India, that time the Sangha of Devadatta was present. And Devadatta was, an extremist, as we have seen in the previous sections, that he wanted to, apply the strict rules. There was no middle path. He wanted everybody to become vegetarian, live outside, don't accept any arama. He was, in other words, he was trying to switch or shift towards the extreme level of asceticism, which the Buddha said is not conducive to one's mental development or Nibbana itself. So for living, he had to beg from house to house. Devadatta received many favors from Ajashatru, which could not return long. Devadatta lost all his influence after Nalagiri incident. By his acts, Devadatta became very unpopular in Magadha, left it for Kosala, thinking that Prasannajit might receive him cordially, but he was contemptuously driven out by Prasannajit. So this is, in a way, we can see how Devadatta was the enemy of the Buddha. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to finish this last section so that we will cover the part 2. So bear with me for another like 10 to 15 minutes, and we will also finish this part 7, Brahmins and the Buddha. Now, this is a very interesting part, the sub part about the Brahmins and the Buddha. And, if we study it, we can find out a lot of important points, a lot of things to discuss, a lot of confrontational views, and many, it's just 6 pages, but it has got a lot of elements of understanding that we can see. I'm not going to read it through. What I'm going to do is, talk about it in a manner so that we will cover all the points in this particular subpart 7, Brahmins and the Buddha. So this is the story, this is the incident that took place in the Kosala country. And Buddha was in the large company of the monks, and he went down to the Brahmin village called Thuna. Now, see, there were Brahmin villages, Brahman Gawa. And it is said that the Brahmanism at the time was a village phenomena. It was like, there were the villages of Brahmins scattered all over the places. And we have seen in the Buddhist scriptures that there were the villages of the Brahmins. And the Kshatriyas were already had bigger political systems, as we have seen with the rise of Kosala and Magadha, that, the Kshatriyas are bigger political, systems. And they used to live in the bigger cities. And Buddha, it said, was, frequenting the villages. And also, he was having his arams near the big cities like Rajagraha and in Magadha. So we know all this. So the Brahmin householders of Thuna heard the news. Samana Gautama, they say, had arrived in the field of a village. And they wanted not to welcome the Buddha. Okay. So the Brahmin householders of the village didn't want to welcome the Buddha. And they said, if the Samana Gautama should enter this village and stay 2 or 3 days, he would convert all these people. Then the Brahmin religion would have no support. We must therefore prevent his entry in our village. So that is what the Brahmins decided, not to let the Buddha enter into their villages. And to reach the village, a river had to be crossed. And the Brahmins, in order to prevent the Blessed One from entering the village, took the boats away from the landing places and made the bridges and causeway unstable. They filled all the wells except one with weeds and the like, and concealed the watering places, rest houses, and shades. The Blessed One learned of their misdeeds, and having compassion on them, crossed the river with his company of monks, went on, and in due course of time reached the Brahmin village of Thuna. He left the road and sat down at the foot of a tree. At that moment, many women were passing by near the Blessed Lord, carrying water. You see, you can imagine the scene, which is very common in the rural India even today. And in that village, an agreement had been made. If the Samana Gautama comes there is to be no welcome or like made for him. And when he comes to a house, neither to him nor to his disciple is any food or water to be given. Now, it's very important. Then a certain Brahmin slave girl, going along with a jar of water, saw the Blessed One and the monks, realized that they were weary and thirsty, and being of devout heart, wanted to give them water. Even and though the people of this village have resolved that nothing at all is to be given to the Samana Gautama, and not even a show of respect is to be made, she said to herself, yet if after I have found this supreme field of merit and worthy recipients of meritorious giving, I do not lay the foundation of my salvation by a mere giving of water, when hereafter shall I be released from the woe? So she thought that, this is the best opportunity for me to gain the merit, and, she should give the water to the Buddha and his disciples. So be it, my masters, let everyone who lives in the village beat or bind me. Still, I will give a gift of water to a field of merit such as this. What a beautiful phrase. Still I will give a gift of water to a field of merit such as this. You see, depriving people of water, not letting them drink the water has been such a part of the heinous caste system. And we all know how, even the touching water and, not letting people to have water is considered to be the punishment, Brahmadanda. So, here this slave girl had a compassion for the Buddha and his disciples, and she made a resolve that, even if they beat me or bind me, I'm going to share this water with the Buddha and his disciples. So be it, my masters, let everyone who lives in the village beat or bind me. Still, I will give a gift of water to a field of merit such as this, Punya Kshetra. You see, the Buddhist Sangha was considered to be the Punya Kshetra. There are no, the geographical places are not Punya Kshetra. It is the company, it's a group, it's a sangha of the people who are devoted to the larger mission. If we make them the gifts, this is the highest Punya Kshetra. So when she made this resolve through the other women carrying water, tried to stop her, without regard for her life, she lifted down the water jar from her head, placed it on one side, approached the Blessed One, and gave him water. He washed his hands and feet and drank the water. Her master, the Brahmin, heard of her giving water to the Blessed One. She had broken the rule of the village, and I am blamed, he said. And burning with rage and grinding his teeth, he hurled her to the ground and beat her with his hands and feet. Because of that, she died. See how much hatred, how much, you see, this is how the Buddha was despised by the powers to be, who was a challenge to their power, who was a challenge to their religious systems, which were built on the exploitation of the people. This incidents, which Baba Sahib Ambedkar included here in the Buddha and His Dhamma, is very indicative of a kind of situation, hatred that the Buddha had faced. But the Buddha was also a meticulous teacher. He was such a profound teacher that even people hated him. He was there out of his compassion to teach them. And this is what we find in this part now as to how the Buddha teaches them how to be the real Brahmins. So the Brahmins like Dona, who visited the Exalted One and greeted him, and after exchanging the customary words of greeting, sat down at once. And so seated, Brahmin Dona said to the Exalted One, what did he say? Listen carefully. I have heard it said, Master Gautama, that Master Gautama does not salute aged, venerable Brahmins, well stricken in years, long on life's road, grown old, nor rise up for them, nor offer them a seat. Buddha was just respecting the human being. He had no special favor of anybody who claimed that they are bigger than others. He treated the king and the pauper same. He had no, this discriminatory mind. He has no mind that differentiated between the people. Every human being was the same for him. And, he didn't give any special regard to anybody. So, Master Gautama, is it so? Master Gautama does none of these things to aged, venerable Brahmin. This is not right, Master Gautama. So, he's saying, Brahma Dona is saying that this is not right. So, the Buddha asked the Dona, very important question. And I think this question has to be asked to the Brahmins. Do you not profess to be a Brahmin, Dona? If of anyone, Master Gautama, in speaking rightly, it should be said, the Brahmin is well born on both sides, very concerned about racial purity. Descent, pure descent as far as 7th generation, both of my mother and father, unchallenged and without reproach in point of birth, studious, carrying the mantras in mind, a past master in the 3 Vedas, with the indices and ritual, in phonology too, and in the legend, an expert in words and grammar, skilled in reading the mass of the great man, in speculation on the universe, to be sure of me, Master Gautama, in speaking rightly, that this thing should be said, for I, Master, am so born, so skilled. So he's saying that I am a Brahmin. That's what the Dona says. And this is how the meticulous teacher, the Buddha, comes into being. And even he is trying to help the people who hated him, the Brahmins. So Dona, those Brahmin sages of old, mantra makers, mantra sayers, whose ancient collection of mantra verses, hymns and sayings, Brahmin knows every hymn, every say, every word, the word, ever has saying said to wit. Attaka, Vamaka, Vamadeva, Vasamitra, Yamadaggi, Angirasa, Bharadwaj have declared. So there are the 5 classes of the Brahmins. At that time, there were the 5 classes of the Brahmin, the Buddha said. So he said, to which do you belong? So which are the 5 classes of the Brahmins? One is Brahma-like, the another one is Deva-like, the third one is the bounded, the 4th one is the breaker of the bounds, and the 5th one, the Brahmin outcast. You see, that time the concept of outcast was very different, isn't it? That is not of today. The practice of untouchability as such didn't exist that time, but they were the community of the people who were called or declared to be outcast. So the Buddha is asking to Dona. Even today, there are many classes, many castes within the Brahmin itself. So the Buddha is asking, what kind of Brahmin are you? You are saying that you are a Brahmin. What kind of a Brahmin are you? And he says, are you Brahma-like, Deva-like, the bounded, the breaker of bonds, and fifthly, the Brahmin outcast? And you say, I'm not going to go much into this. What I'm going to say, you look at the teaching devices that the Buddha used. So he said that if you want to be a Brahma-like Brahmin, then what you need to do is you have to practice what is called the 4 Brahma Vihars. What are the 4 Brahma Vihars? Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekka. So if he says that any Brahmin who has been practicing these 4 Brahma Vihar and living a righteous life, based on the Dhamma, and taking the beggar's ball, becoming homeless, going for begging from door to door, shaving off their heads, wearing the yellow robes, and they abide with metta in all the directions and throughout the world, with the thought of amity, far-reaching, expansive, measureless, without hatred or ill will. This is the description of the Brahma Vihara. So if you are practical Brahma like Brahmin, if you are cultivating the life of a renunciate, homeless, you have renunciated the home, donned the yellow robe, taken the ball, begging ball in your hand, and then so what here Buddha is saying that I am more of Brahma like than you. Very beautiful. The Buddha will play on the words. In other places we have seen how Buddha ridiculed the Brahmin, the concept of Brahma. He said that nobody has seen the Brahma. It's like a blind man, one blind man leading another blind man. And he said that it's very speculative. And he didn't believe in the theory that people came from the mouth of the Brahma. Nobody is going to accept that theory. It's a ridiculous one. So this is the Buddha is saying that if you really want to be a Brahma-like Brahmin, you have to follow what I'm teaching you. Leave the house, take the begging bowl, go door to door, cultivate the metta, karuna, mudita, upekka, in your heart, and all the time, cultivate these thoughts in your mind of amity, which is far-reaching, expansive, measureless, without hatred or ill will. So if you see saying that if you practice this 4 Brahma Vihar, then after the breaking up of the body, kayasya bheda parang marna, this is the word in Pali. After the breaking up of the body and after death, he arrives in the well-faring Brahma world. Thus, Dona Brahmin becomes Brahma-like. So how the Brahmin becomes Deva-like? I'm not going to go into discussion. When they do not cohabit with other women, and there is a description of the women which they should not cohabit, and other than their own wives, and you see if they practice the 4 dhyanas, the 4 musings, the 4 dhyanas, then after the break of their body, they can become Deva-like. That's what the Buddha says, because Brahmanism is all about other world. So that's how the Brahmins become Deva-like if they practice the 4 jhana, meditations, absorptions. The wounded ones are confined to the house. They are only concerned with their family lives. They don't do anything, and they cohabit with any women. That's what is called the bounded Brahmana. And bounded one is somebody who doesn't live this kind of life as the bounded one. He doesn't keep himself in the bounds of the family, and they break the bounds. So they become the breaker of the bounds. So the interesting thing for us is a Brahmin outcast. So you see, if we look at this concept of a Brahmin outcast, so there were like the Brahmins were, among them also there were outcasts. And what is it that we are going to now look at? The Brahmin outcast, the concept of Brahmin outcast. Take the case Dona of a Brahmin of a similar birth, he for 8 or 40 years. This is a description that comes in the description of all the types of Brahmana. Okay, now what this outcast Brahmin does, he despises He doesn't like the begging ball. He's going about for alms, and he's breaking all the moral conducts. And if he's asked, how is it that an honorable Brahmin leads this sort of life? And to this he replies, the outcast Brahmin replies, just as fire burns clean things or unclean, but not by that is the fire defiled. Even so, good sirs, if a Brahmin lead a life doing all these things, not by that is a Brahmin defiled. And it is said, he leads a life doing all these things, and therefore he is called Brahmin outcast. Thus, Dona, a Brahmin becomes a Brahmin outcast. Verily, Dona, those Brahmin sages of old, mantra makers, mantra sayers, those ancient collection, him, say word, each rest, then the repeats of the same formula that goes on here. Which of them are you? Then the Buddha asks him. If such there are, Master Gautama, we at least do not fulfill the ways of the Brahmin outcast. But it is marvelous what you say, Master Gautama. Let Master Gautama take me as a lay disciple, gone to his refuge, henceforth as long as life lasts. You see, why this discussion is important about the Buddha and the Brahmins? Because, the Brahmins claim that, they are superior. The Buddha asks him, what kind of a Brahmin you are? And then Buddha says that if you are a Brahma-like Brahmin, you have to cultivate this. If you cultivate this Brahma Vihara, then only you can be a Brahma-like Brahmin. If you cultivate the meditation, then only you can be a Deva-like. If you remain bounded to the house, looking after your family, but at the same time, not cultivating the virtues, you are a bounded Brahmin. If you are, a Brahmin who has broken the bounds, that means you are not confined to house, but you are living the life of extravaganza, then you are that kind of Brahmin. Then finally Buddha says that, there are you the outcast Brahmin, that, you conduct all the immoral activities, that leads to the downfall of a man, and what kind of Brahmin you are. So I think this question is even valid today. If the Brahmins claim that they are Brahmins, what kind of a Brahmin you are, who you are? I think this is the question. The Buddha asks you who you are, what do you profess, what do you teach? And I think these are very important questions, that has to be asked. If some people are claiming superior to other people, who you are, what do you practice? If you want to claim that you are that, then what kind, what type, under what type you fall. And if you want to fall in this type, you practice this. You practice a heart which is full of, you don't practice caste discrimination. You don't practice dispute, the dehumanization of the people. You see, if you want to be claimed like a Deva, like Brahmin, do you practice the dhyanas? Are you accomplishing dhyanas? So I think this is a very beautiful teaching device. Let's not take it at a face value in terms of, the glorification of the Brahmins. It actually punctures the pride of the Brahmins, and it tells them that, if you want to claim the superiority of another, become a house, homeless, go door to door and beg, practice these four. So the Buddha is saying that if you want to really become something, worthy of a human being, you follow the Buddha Dhamma. So I will end here because we have conducted a very long class today, and I would open up the class for the further questions and answers and discussion. Okay. So any questions? Anything to discuss?
Yes, sir. Rahul here.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Am I audible clearly? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Just regarding this story of the Drona you just said, I also had some elaborate discussion of this, elaborate description of the discussion in the book that is written by R. Spence Hardy, that is Legends and Theories of the Buddhist. So in that book, on page number 45, he has two times mentioned this. One book is this, another book I don't remember. So in that book, he has also mentioned that the Buddha criticizing the Drona, that means he was just trying to say that even the Vedas are not the properties of the Brahmin. The Kashyap Buddha has given these Vedas to the rishis. The name of the rishis mentioned into that one, and he said those were totally different. Means that is, those are based on the Buddhist philosophies, and you Brahmins had corrupted this Veda. Like there was a, means you have started killing animals, eating animals in the name of Vedas. Then you started doing marriages. You are, means giving birth to the children. You, because you are, you know that your philosophy cannot survive because of only with your talent. You need your children to spread your philosophy. You are not confident in your philosophy as well. So that is means written by R. Spence Hardy. So means that's means we can think that even the Vedas they cannot claim. Whatever Vedas, those are totally corrupted. Those are, means, so that was one reference. Another you said regarding the Jai Mangal Attagatha. So the two incidents, means from the entire Buddhist literature, only 8 stories were picked up, and the two we discussed. So that is, means we can say how important those are. And those 8 stories are picked up, that each critical condition, how Buddha handled that one, and what are the qualities in handling those 8. So two we discussed. In the story of Chinsa, we can say the peace and what we can say, that patience. Like whenever you will have the incident like Chinsa, you should learn the peace and patience from Buddha. Another we discuss about the Nalagiri. So whenever there is a type of, we are going to face the anger like Buddha faced with the Nalagiri. So that time we have to spread the water of love. So that's actually I wanted to highlight. That's it. Thank you.
A very good point, Rahul bhai. And we actually don't know about these Vedas and all, because they were not put to writing for a long time, and they were like the oral tradition, and it was confined to a very narrow group of people, while the Buddha Dhamma was a vast domain. It was a popular.
But this R. Spence Hardy has given the reference from the Tripitaka in this book.
Yes,
Religions and theory. So that's why we can think it as an authentic.
I think it was just a small fringe movement, the Brahmanism that time. It was not like it was not an influential movement for all the people, and there were many religious traditions in India even that time, isn't it? Like we see the Brahmajal Sutta, there were more than 60 religious traditions, philosophical systems. The Sankhya system, the yoga system, they were not Brahminical systems. Later on they were put into the Brahminical system in the medieval period. Before that they were all these Pashupas and Kapalikas and all. So if we look at that, there were many schools of thought, there were many religions at the time of the Buddha, and many people, many teachers were there, and the Brahmanism was just one of it. And even if it was not very prominent, then the Brahmins used to live in the villages. The kind of importance that has been given to the Brahminical literature and all, it was not there at the time of the Buddha. The Buddha didn't care much about it. Only in the context of teaching the Brahmins, isn't it? Those who are living.
Brilliant.
So let's not make this something which is very fringe and marginal into something very big, and that has been a big mistake which has been committed by the Indian history, because the Indian history was written by the so-called Brahmins. They inflated their claims on everything. So I think that's not how it was. So Rahul, that these two examples of Chincha and Nalagiri in the Jai Mangal Ashtakatha are very important, because I think we are now in the realm of looking at the Buddha as a human being, as a person who faced difficulties, as a person who had undergone a lot of problems. So I think this sort of reading is very helpful to all of us to clarify a lot of points for ourselves, and to think through our own lives, and to think through how we can teach people how to be on the path of the righteousness. So the Buddha is not angry about the Brahmins, even if they are trying to despise, calling him Samana, Bhogautama. The Buddha doesn't care. His only thing is compassion. He will even teach to his vitriolic enemy, like even for Devdatta he will have so much of compassion that he will open the death of doors of deathlessness for him. For the Brahmins who castigated Buddha like this, even didn't want to give the water to the Buddha, even to such kind of the heinous communities, the Buddha will be so compassionate. He would try to help them with his Dhamma. So I think that's very beautiful about the Buddha. And that's how, the attitude of the person who is rooted in the Dhamma should be. So Buddha is exemplifying as a teacher how we should be carrying ourselves in the world. Vidanand, about this Abhidhammika Pitaka and all, we will take it further in the another context. But I think, can we end our class here today?
One thing,
Yes, Alka madam.
Buddha's Dhamma is morality.
Yes.
Dhamma is morality, morality is Dhamma. Although he was charged with false charge of murder, false charge of immorality, still throughout his life he taught morality, and same principle Dr. Baba Sahib implemented in his life. He said that people are afraid of him because he follows morality, Panchashil. That is why people are afraid of.
Good.
So these were not the charges. These were the attempts to stop the light to spread. And Buddha has very clearly says as little bit of light pushes lot of darkness.
True. Okay, so if there is nothing now on your mind at the moment, we'll meet next week. Thank you. Jai Bhim, Namo Buddhaya.